Rick Wolff. At least once a year, I like to spend some time going over the basic misconceptions and misunderstandings when it comes to active college recruiting of high school athletes. Now, let's face it, for a lot of sports parents and their athletes, getting a kid recruited to play sports in college is it's the ultimate payoff to all those years of practice and tryouts and games and so on. But as you know, college recruiting has changed dramatically in recent years, and I'd like to go beyond the obvious questions to get to the heart of the matter. I mean, you can get pretty much the basics about college recruiting anywhere online or in a variety of books on the subject. And as a former college coach myself, I just find it's important that moms and dads and their kids who aspire to play ball in college, they have to go a little deeper, because each year, like clockwork, I hear from sports parents everywhere about their youngster being frustrated or disappointed about their college sports career. And, to help guide parents and coaches and kids, I've asked my good friend Wayne Mazzoni to come back on the show. Wayne's been on the show for, 6-7 years now. And I will tell you that Wayne's in his 16th year of coaching college sports. He's currently at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. His book, Get Recruited, The Definitive Guide to Playing College Sports, is quite frankly where you should start to get all the basics. And Wayne, quite frankly, speaks all the time to high school groups. In short, he knows what he's talking about, especially because, quite frankly, he's a college coach himself. And Wayne, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rick. How are you?
Good to talk to you again. I also want to remind our listeners that they can start their drive for more information about college recruiting. They just go to WayneMazzoni.com. Now, Wayne, as you know, as we discussed in years past, there's a lot of ground to cover here. And by the way, friends, we'll take your calls at our toll-free line. It's 1-877-337-6666. It's brought to you by Mohegan Sun. Create your moment at Mohegan Sun. It's time to shine. But Wayne, let's start with some of the basic misconceptions. I mean, I hear this all the time. A parent will say, my youngster not only made the town's travel team in a sport, and he's doing well on it, but he's not being recruited particularly actively. And I just want to start with this so parents understand the differences from the perspective of college recruiting: high school ball, travel teams, and showcases. Let's start with those three distinctions, Wayne.
Well, the way I look at it, there's two types of kids in the recruiting process. One that doesn't have to do much because he or she is really talented. Everybody's going to is really going to know about them through press clips or through word of mouth, through coaches contacting other coaches. And then you have the set of kids that are probably good enough to play, but not those outstanding type kids that are just going to jump off the field or the page at you. Mm-hmm. Those types of kids kind of need to understand more about the recruiting process, what to do to at least get themselves evaluated. And just what you mentioned, the high school, the travel ball, the camps, the showcases, they're all viable ways to at least try to get yourself out there, some more effective than others. Obviously, the high school season can be difficult for the most part because college coaches are in season as well. I mean, it's football season in high school and it's football season in college, and college coaches aren't skipping their upcoming, big game on a Saturday to go watch a high school game. So it can be very difficult, especially during the high school year. Correct.
Okay. Well, now, I mean, again, I think a lot of moms and dads figure, well, if my kid is good enough, has gone through tryouts to make the so-called local travel team, well, let's say it's in ice hockey or soccer or lacrosse, whatever sport, baseball, you name it, that they make the travel team, and the travel team goes around to other communities playing other elite teams, that should be enough to get them on the map with college recruiting. But, Wayne, you know and I know that that's just only part of the issue. Invariably, most of the recruiting, A, does not take place off the high school varsity squad, and B, doesn't really take off the travel team. It takes place really at the showcase events. Now, talk about the showcases, if you would.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's put it this way. Probably one of the best pieces of advice I could give listeners is try to make the recruiting process more personal. I'm not trying to sidestep the question, but just to give a bigger picture. For example, if your son or daughter is interested in Bucknell, I mean, I'd have my son or daughter send a quick email to the volleyball coach and say, Coach, I'm interested in playing for your program. I've done my research. I think I can fit in there academically, socially, athletically. What do you think is the best way for me to get out there for you to make an evaluation of me? And that coach will probably tell you what they do. This is the tournaments that we like to go to. If you're on the travel team that plays at this event, or you sign up for this showcase, this is where we'll be. So, travel teams can work and tournaments can work, but it's not foolproof. You could play in a tournament for a whole weekend. You might get 20 college coaches. There also could be no college coaches. The benefit of a showcase, and again, that's not the be-all, end-all way, but the benefit is generally college coaches are employed to work there and therefore are going to be there. So at least when you spend your money and your time, you know that a college coach is actually going to be in attendance, and that's the biggest benefit to those.
Well, let me I think that's real good advice, very practical stuff that I think a lot of moms and dads need to hear, and obviously there are kids who aspire to play college athletics, and that is, if you are serious about playing college sports, it doesn't hurt at all to, as you said, Wayne, to just send a quick email to that coach at that college you're looking at, and then, because most of the colleges will in fact respond to you right away and say thanks for your interest and so on and so forth, and then as part of that email you should definitely ask the coach, tell me what showcases, what tournaments, what events or camps, whatever you're going to be at, so at least I can go there to show you what I can do. As I said, that makes it a much more personal kind of approach, and if the coach doesn't get back to you or doesn't respond, well, as an athlete, you should take that as a tip that perhaps they're not particularly interested or they're not particularly well organized. But
and it's that also goes to what kind of program it is. I mean, if it's Notre Dame football, I'd imagine they're getting a bunch of emails, all the time. If it's the less powerful of a sport or a school, they'd be thrilled to hear from you. So obviously the recruiting process at the revenue-producing sports and at the big-time schools is also different than the way it is at the 95% of other schools. So recruiting can definitely be different, football, basketball, and, big school to small school.
Well, no, and we'll get later on in the hour, we'll talk about the differences between those programs which, quite frankly, do have football, basketball, even perhaps ice hockey, where there is revenue being produced, and how that has an effect and impact upon how much money is handed out in terms of scholarships. But I just want to come back, and again, folks, we're talking with Wayne Mazzoni this morning. We're talking about college recruiting, and we'll get to your calls in a minute or two. Because this is a relatively new phenomenon, and a lot of moms and dads may not be aware of this when they were growing up, and that is the advent of showcases where kids might go on a weekend, perhaps in the spring or summer. Showcases are basically a place where you can, as it just sounds like, a place where you can show off your abilities. They can run as much as $500, which obviously the family pays for. The truth of the matter is, Wayne, and I know that some of these showcases are extraordinarily top-notch. You get a lot of college coaches there who are actively eager to recruit and meet the players and so on and so forth. Also, some of these showcases, unfortunately, are not that way. They're just basically money makers where the attendance from college programs is pretty minimal. If you would, tell me about your experiences with those.
I think if I'm a consumer, what I do is do my research. So I would either ask college coaches or I'd ask kids that have been to those events or parents and find out, because just like every business or area of life, there's good things and there's bad things. So once you start learning more about your particular sport, you'll kind of get the idea of really what is a quality event to spend your time and money and what's not. So I think probably the worst way to make a decision is just to kind of Google it, look and, hey, who's got the nice website? That might be just someone has good graphics and is a good marketer, but yet really it's a lot of sizzle, not much steak. So I would certainly do my research, and I would research the coaches that are actually working those events. So if it lists Sacred Heart University is going to be at that event, again, a quick email, quick phone call, Coach, you're listed on this on this website to be at this event on Thursday. Will you be there? Are you going to be there? What do you think of it? Is it worth it? So again, try to make things personal. It's kind of like the job search, except the people that are doing the hiring, you can kind of get in touch with them and get direct feedback of what they're looking for. So you should take advantage of trying to narrow down your list of schools and try to make it much more personal.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. This is a case where it really, it's the parent, it does make sense to spend a little time, do a little advanced research, find out, do your homework, ask around, is this showcase going to be worthwhile? It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take, obviously, a lot of time. The last thing you want to end up is having your youngster go to a showcase and find there's only 2 or 3 coaches there, and it's not well run, and it's not much of a high profile. I think that's critically important because, again, that for the most part, for a lot of kids, not all of them, but for a lot of kids, as Wayne just said, this is where the real active recruiting goes on. All right, let's take some calls here. Let's go to 1-877-337-6666. Let's go to Pat out in Eastport. Good morning, Pat. You're on the fan.
Good morning, Rick. Good morning, Wayne.
Morning.
Yesterday I was out there. My son and I were at your clinic out in Ridge, and I think one of the things that most set in was Wayne began with and ended with the importance of academics.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality of not only the athlete, but the quality of the young man that's coming in. And I think that's so important for these kids to understand that if you're a D1 candidate, but you're a D student, you're not going to go anywhere. And I'd just like to see Wayne address that a little bit more. He had Keith Osick out there, coaches at Farmingdale, also spoke to the boys. He played for the Pirates, as you know, in the Nationals. And the two of them just did such a great job with the clinic, and I thought it was just a great experience. But I'd like to hear Wayne address the academic issue.
Sure. Thanks for the call, Pat.
Well, that one's pretty easy. I mean, everyone's purpose of going to college should be to get an education, to get a degree, to get a job, the chance of playing professionally, pretty slim to none. So you should obviously pick a school you like, not just for the athletics, but for the academics as well. The other piece of it is twofold. Number one, a lot of schools you need pretty darn good grades to get in. I mean, Lafayette was at our event yesterday. I mean, that's the first thing they ask you after they see that you can play the sport. Is obviously, can you get into the school? But I think most college coaches don't want borderline students who they're going to have to worry about going to class, getting their work done, possibly going to fail out. And I guess it all goes back to a little bit of that sort of revenue-producing model. I mean, if I'm Nick Saban at Alabama, which Lord knows I'm not, but if I was, and I need to win football games, and I have ticket sales and corporate sponsors and alum pressures and boosters, am I going to take the best receiver in the country with borderline grades that I have to hold his hand to make sure he gets to class if he can win me games? You betcha. Most other college coaches are not going to put up with that. There's too many kids out there that take their work too seriously, and that's when I make my speeches, one thing I always say is the one benefit of being a college coach over a high school coach, because I think high school coaching is wonderful, is you get to pick the players. So if you need one goalie and you're choosing between 5, and one is a great student, 2 are borderline, and the other 2 are a disaster, I mean, who would you take if they're all similarly talented? So the worst position to be in as a student athlete is to limit your choices by your grade. So all of a sudden Lafayette comes up and says, we love you, we think you could play here. Oh, here's your transcript. Oh, sorry about that, that's not going to work. That is not a fun spot to be in. We're talking this morning with Wayne Mazzoni. We're talking about the process of being recruited at a high school, and we're going to take a break. John Minko has the update, but when we come back, we'll take more of your calls. We'll talk about the whole process of how important the academics are in terms of the recruiting process. Stay with me. Back with more right after this.
WFAN New York.
We're talking this morning about college recruiting, and as I said at the outset, I always like to go a little deeper than the obvious stuff because I think in the last 10, 15 years, this has gotten much more complicated. I can tell you, as being a former college coach myself, that when you look at the NCAA rule book regarding the rules and regulations with recruiting, it is just the size of a doorstop. It is encyclopedic, and it's very complicated. It's very, very difficult to understand. It's sort of like looking at the tax code for the United States. In any event, we're talking with Wayne Mazzoni about this whole process, and we're taking your calls at 1-877-337-6666. Wayne, let's get back to our people calling in this morning. Let's go to Jeff out in Plainview. Good morning, Jeff. You're on the fan.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good. How are you, Jeff?
Good morning.
Great. I got a question about using video for recruiting. Do you think, Coach, that it's better as an introduction, the calling card to send to a coach before you meet them? Or do you think if it's better after the fact, after you've already seen them at a showcase? And do you think most coaches prefer to get a DVD or to, have a click to link to something online? What do you think's better?
Boy, it's a good question. There's a lot to talk about with video. I think certainly you'd like to use it as a calling card up front. And, if they've seen you at an event or something, it's certainly a decent thing to use as a follow-up. I thought you were kind of going with, do you meet the coach first and then send video? I think every coach would like to know something about a player before they wind up meeting with them. And video, definitely, in this day and age, I think a nice, easy YouTube link where you can just throw a skills video or highlights or piece of a game, maybe a little different in football where they want a full game tape. But I think just that point and click, and you put it in an email, and the coach can just click on it and get some information is really probably the best way to go.
Jeff, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. And I will tell you, too, friends, that when it comes to highlight reels, whatever, it's become sort of essential to have that as part of your portfolio. But bear in mind that college coaches, and Wayne, surely you'll attest to this, you get a ton of these, links to YouTube, or you get a ton of these DVDs coming to you. It takes a lot of time for a college coach to sit down and spend a day or two going through all the video.
Yeah, I think each program, again, is going to handle that differently. Some programs are well-staffed enough, or they have grad assistants, and they're going to watch every video that comes in. Other programs, they're not going to do that at all. They won't watch the video unless someone, with some merit, high school coach or a scout of some sort calls and says, hey, there's a video I'm going to send you, or this kid sent you a video, he's worth it, or she's worth it, take a look. So everybody does it a little bit differently. I think it can't hurt to certainly have the video, but there is no one magic way to get recruited. So you can't just have a video and think, well, that's all I need, and nor can you say, well, the video doesn't matter at all. I'll just get seen during high school or summer team. Or, there's no one magic way. You have to be thorough and do everything you can.
I hear you. Let's go to Andrew in Brooklyn. Hi, Andrew. You're on the fan.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
How you doing, Andrew?
Hey, Andrew.
Doing all right. I'm a high school coach in the city that's not the most popular, and you guys have been talking a lot about the student athlete and what they could do. But as a coach, what's the best route to get my players more exposure? Because I have maybe, a few guys who might be able to go on to maybe D2 or D3. And what's the best way to go about doing that for them?
That's an awesome question. The first thing I would do is at some point when you think that kid is ready, have a sit down and say, all right, let's talk about your options and what you want. I mean, what I tell all those kids is, first of all, go visit some schools. Go jump in your car, go look at 5 or 10 schools, and then come back with some idea of what you want. And that means the size of the school, the setting, how far from home. Give me something to work with in terms of being able to guide you. And then, as a coach, the toughest part is for you to realistically say to this kid, listen, I know the next level. I played there. I've helped a lot of kids. You are a D3 player, and that kid and that kid's parents may not see it that way. But your job is to be as honest as possible. And then if this kid says, you know what, I've understood what you've said. I visited some schools. Here's what my academics are. Here's 3 or 4 schools that I think make a fit for me. As long as you agree with those schools, then you should make a phone call and just say, listen, I'm calling on behalf of this player. He's done his homework. He would be a good fit for you as a person, as a student, as a player, and please come take a look at him or her.
Yeah, Wayne, let me just follow up on that, because it is an important point. I think it's fair to say that when kids dream of playing college athletics, and again, let's go back and I always like to rehash this because it really gives people a reality check. Less than 5% of all high school varsity athletes ever go on to play sports at either Division I, Division II, or Division III. So you basically were saying that for 95% of all the high school varsity athletes out there, once they finish playing after their senior year in high school, they're pretty much done in terms of sports. But for those who do aspire to go on to play college sports, when they think about playing sports, they invariably usually start by saying, oh, I'm going to go play at a Division I program, as though they going from being a senior in high school to being a freshman in college at a D1 program is a natural step up, a natural progression in much the same way of going from being in 10th grade to 11th grade. And the fact is, and Wayne, you know this so well, it's a quantum leap, and most kids can't make that jump. And so it takes a great deal of maturity for a youngster, for a parent, to sit down and say, well, you know what? I would love to I want to continue playing sports in college, but I don't want to go to a D1 program and basically, if I make the team, just never see the field, never get into any games my freshman year, spend all those hours practicing, hoping that the coach looks at me, knowing that, in fact, when I'm a sophomore, another wave of kids are going to be brought in as recruits. I'm never going to get a chance to play. Wouldn't it make more sense to say, gee, would it be more fun to play at a Division III program where you're actually going to get some time to play in the games, have some fun? Let's face it, the real fun comes from playing and competing rather than just sit forever as the fifth-string backup player on a Division I program, if you're good enough to even make that team.
Yeah, here's another way to look at it, and you're 100% right, but 1 in 24 high school athletes play at the college level. It's 4%, but 1 in 24. So that hits home when you realize you're going to be that 1 in the 24. The second thing is, these kids and parents, please, as much as you can, get out there and watch some college sports. Watch a practice, because most people only throw on the TV, and it's not a lot of sports. And, of course, it's only the highest level that makes the TV. I mean, get out and watch some of these D2, D3 teams practice. Watch the skill. Watch the size of the players. Watch the commitment. It's a huge jump. And the last thing before we move on is take like Duke basketball, for example. They will scour the United States with all their resources and look at thousands of potential players and bring in a recruiting class of 4.
Yeah.
It's incredibly competitive to move on and play at the next level. So, people should not certainly shun Division II, Division III, and there's more Division III programs in every sport than there are Division I.
I couldn't agree with you more, and it's such an important lesson to drill home. This goes beyond, obviously, once you've gone and you've seen the kids that competed in the showcases on travel teams and tournaments, and you've sent out your emails and your letters, and you met with coaches. Understand what Wayne is saying, that you have to, as a parent, you have an obligation to your youngster to take him or her when they're a junior or a senior in high school, get them out to the schools they're interested in, let them go to some practices, whether it's football or volleyball or field hockey, lacrosse. Let them see firsthand just how competitive Division II, Division III athletics are at the collegiate level, because you're going to be stunned, and they're going to be shocked as well at just how good it is, and how, quite frankly, how much of a jump it is from their high school level. It's a lot of fun to play college sports. The other aspect, which again I want to come back to reemphasize, is academics. No college coach wants to be in a situation where they're always babysitting a youngster to be motivated in school. You have to pay attention to your grades. Even if you get into a college because somebody says, well, you're a slotted athlete and we're giving you a break here, you still have to go to class, still got to do your papers, still got to take your tests, because if you run into academic difficulties, the coach says, well, I'll move on. I'll get somebody else to take your spot. And before we get back to our calls, Wayne, I just want to also clarify something which a lot of parents don't understand, and that is if a kid does get a scholarship, whether it's a full, which is very, very rare, or a partial scholarship, which is, how these things are usually sliced and diced, and that is the scholarships are not 4-year guarantees. They have to be renewed year after year after year. And
absolutely, yeah. That's the current rule. Now, and why would a scholarship get taken away, I guess, is the first question. First of all, academic difficulties is number one, and then anything disciplinary. So if you have, issues off campus or in the dorms or something like that, you're going to be at risk of losing scholarship money. 99.9% of the time, it's not a performance issue. If you play great or don't play well, it's not going to be your money goes up and down. It's not really like you have an agent and you negotiate year to year. Injuries, if an injury happens, generally a school will put your money in, take away your lacrosse scholarship, but put money back in there so the parents are paying the same, but that coach gets their scholarship dollars back, which are, quite limited. The NCAA has talked about doing a 4-year scholarship. it's one of those things at the NCAA retreat that they talked about a variety of things, infractions, and all the rules that you mentioned before. That's something that's come up. Where it will go, no one knows at the moment. It's still just a one-year renewable deal.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of kids don't understand. And as you said, I'm glad you brought this up. But that rule is being talked about and discussed. Nothing's going to change immediately, but it is something that a lot of parents need to know. That's a year-to-year deal. And the kid obviously has to keep, earning that every year to keep getting their scholarship money. Let's go quickly. Let's go to Alan in Ocean, New Jersey. Hi, Alan. You're on the fan.
Hi. Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
My son plays soccer, and what I've heard that is going to go into effect is at the national level, from a national program view, that they're going to restrict the kids that are playing on the academy or top-level teams to not to play on the school teams. I was wondering if you knew about that and if you could comment, please.
Well, Alan, I can tell you myself, and thanks for the call, I did a show a few weeks ago about exactly that what the United States Soccer Academy is now passing basically these mandates that if you want to play soccer on their travel program, you can no longer play for your high school team. This has caused great consternation because it causes kids who obviously want to enjoy playing on their high school team with their friends and buddies from school and the local community saying, well, I have to make a choice. It's not really fair. There's no real logic to this from my perspective. It's U.S. Soccer Academy says the extra 2.5, 3 months allows these kids to get better trained to play eventually maybe for the Olympic team. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. And quite frankly, I know about a year ago they tried to do this in Dallas, Texas, and basically the two best players on that team for the U.S. Soccer Academy in that area said, you know what, we're not going to bother that nonsense. We're just going to basically play for a high school team. It's more fun. And the kids still went on to get college scholarships. So it's a concern. I think they're running into some real heavy pushback on this. And as I said, I think it's something that people have to decide for themselves. But I think it's really a bad PR move by U.S. Soccer Academy. Alan,
I'll just briefly throw in, I know we're probably up against the 2020 there, but I would briefly say that seems to me to lead towards the trend of athletes playing a single sport, that they're in that program and they're going to play one sport year-round, which quite frankly seems to be the trend in every sport. And every college coach that I know that I talk to thinks the way of the one-sport athlete is a terrible trend, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'd rather see kids play 2 and 3 sports, have fun, develop, and then, you get to college, you're going to play one sport most likely, but if you look at all the pros and trace these men and women back to their youth, they were all 2 and 3 sports stars. That worries me.
Yeah, absolutely. All the college coaches say we want to find kids who play a variety of sports for a lot of reasons. 1-877-337-6666 is our number. We're talking this morning with Wayne Mazzoni. We're talking about the whole process, the art and science, the practice of getting your kid recruited into college to play sports and making sure it's a real good fit for your youngster, because it is obviously a huge jump away from the local school into a college setting, and obviously things aren't always as they seem. 1-877-337-6666. Wayne, before we get back to our callers, I just want to take a moment here because there are some terms that I think a lot of parents and kids don't necessarily understand. I'm talking here specifically about the term walk-on, recruited walk-on, which is distinctly different, and then, of course, the scholarship athlete. And then let me just start myself by saying that the scholarship athlete is a kid who has been actively recruited and brought in by the college coach to, getting some sort of money. Usually it's a partial scholarship. Again, I mentioned earlier in the hour that only the programs that make a lot of money, like football, basketball, perhaps ice hockey, perhaps lacrosse, might get full scholarships. Most every other kid in every other sport is getting a partial scholarship, but again, they are getting some money. And that kid obviously is getting that sort of like golden ticket to come and play at that school. But the walk-on and the recruited walk-on, Wayne, explain the difference between those if you would.
Yeah, let's take, we'll start at least with let's take, Alabama football again. They have 110 kids on the roster, but you're maxed out at 85 scholarships. At a sport like that, they're more than likely to give fulls out to players, to get them to commit. So you're still left with basically 25 players or sometimes more that are still on the roster with no scholarship money. But those are highly sought-after recruited student athletes that the coach was literally just out of scholarship money for that recruiting class. Sometimes those kids will earn their way into getting a scholarship. Sometimes they'll stay in the same vein, just be on the team without scholarship money. Sometimes they last a year and they either stop playing or they get cut. The true walk-on, I mean, where the kid just looks for the sign of football tryouts, and comes out to make the team, I mean, is almost, gone because, first of all, this roster limitations at the highest of levels, at an Alabama, I would venture to guess they didn't even have an open tryout. Maybe they're going to look for some kid from a soccer team who's going to, try to kick field goals, something along those lines. But where you're going to find more of the true walk-ons is probably that Division III level where it's not scholarship kids. They a lot of times don't know exactly who they have on the roster until a kid actually gets admitted to the school or, accepts and deposits to the school. So you have a much better shot of making a team as a Division III type, walk-on. But to go to a Division I school and be a true walk-on where the coach has no idea about you, you probably have a better chance to hit the lottery than make a team.
Yeah, and again, I'm glad we spent some time talking about this because, as you said, a lot of schools, they don't have walk-ons. They don't have tryouts. I mean, not just for football, for basketball, baseball, they just don't do it. You say, well, wait, I'm a student at this university, and I was really good. I was all league in high school, and I should have the opportunity to try out for the team. No, that's not a given. They just don't have tryouts.
Yeah, I think my advice to someone who's in that boat who just says, you know what, I love Syracuse, and I've always been good at lacrosse, I'm going to try when I get there. I would send a video. I would, have my coach call. I would go to a camp. I would at least communicate with the coach. Hey, listen, I know you're not recruiting me, but I'd love to get an opportunity. Could you take a look at me? Really try to at least make yourself known rather than just showing up, in September with your lacrosse stick and hope to make the team. So there's definitely ways to go about it to give yourself at least some better chance than just non-communicating at all and then hoping you're going to make the team.
And that would probably make you into what we call a recruited walk-on.
If the coach actively pursues you, see, that's a distinction. If a coach contacts you more than one time, by phone, in person, reaches out to you, then you're actively a recruit. If it's just a one-time conversation, then it doesn't count as an actual recruited, student athlete.
Okay. I mean, and again, friends, this is a bit complicated. It's a bit subtle, but understand that there's a lot at stake here, and you got to make sure that your youngster understands. It's just on back in the days of that movie, Rudy at Notre Dame. Stuff doesn't exist anymore. That was 30, 40 years ago. It's much more complicated today, and it's just you just don't go there and say, well, I have a lot. I was used to be good in lacrosse in high school, and I love playing the sport, and I have a lot of heart. No, it doesn't count anymore. Coaches are much too actively recruiting to know exactly who's going to be enrolling at that school as a freshman. All right, let's get back to our callers. Let's go to Bob out in Comac. Hi, Bob. You're on the Fan.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. How's everybody?
Good, Bob. What's up?
Good. My son's being actively recruited by a lot of different colleges. He's a pitcher, and he's going into his junior year. And I was wondering, what is really more important? I was trying to eyeball a college that has a chance to get into the College World Series where he would be noticed more and possibly go on. And, it's, a far chance for him to get a minor league contract or, the majors. But I was thinking it would be better for him to go to a good college that, has a chance to get to the College World Series that's been there, in the past maybe 4 years, getting to the top. Is that a better idea than to just go to any D1 school and let him pitch? What's your take on that?
Wow, I mean, that's a very personal question, meaning everyone's got to sort of decide the best answer for themselves. But one thing that I would expect a student athlete to get in the recruiting process is communication from the college coach of why we like you, where we saw you, how you fit into our plan. So I assume most kids would like to go to the best academic and athletic school where they have a legitimate shot to play. So if that happens to be an elite program and they say, listen, you're going to play right away as a freshman, we expect down the road you to be one of the key members of the team, if it was my son, I would say, listen, go to the best academic and athletic program you can. If they said, listen, you're not going to see the field much and for a couple of years, and then there's another school that is not as storied as a program, but says, listen, we're growing, we'd like you to come in and contribute right away, I would probably go for the playing time. But those kind of questions are very personal, and I'd have to know your son more to know what really would be best.
Yeah, I just to echo what Wayne is saying, Bob, to me, the key is the academics, because you're just unfortunately one arm operation away from seeing that career go down the drain, and so the academics is always the top priority. And two, these days, there's so much in terms of scouting that goes on. It makes no difference where your kid plays, as long as, in fact, he's playing and have a chance to pitch. If he's that good, whether he's at a D1 or a D3 or any place in between, they're going to find him because he's going to perform. But he has to pitch. That's the key in this. And again, always understand the whole baseline, the foundation has to do with academics. That's the key. Bob, thank you for the call. Let's go quickly. Let's go over to JP in Queens. Hi, JP. You're on the Fan.
Fellas, how are we doing this morning? I think this is a great program, and it's very informative. And as a college coach, I coach at the college level. I think the biggest thing you're seeing now through all divisions is a great deal of parity of the levels. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got a kid from Rutgers and a kid from Quinnipiac transferring to William Patterson to play basketball at Division III level. And William Patterson is a very great program. You got all these things and all the pressures that, and all even the Division III schools are starting to send heavy finances these programs' way. And with that, the pressure increases like it does at the higher levels. And in turn, the quality is getting better and better. And I think the biggest challenge as a college coach is getting an honest assessment from whether it be a high school coach or a parent. Because a lot of times high school coaches who coach, one of these elite programs, that, they feel that basically any one of their kids could play at the Division III level.
Right.
I think that, you run into a situation where, can he play or can he really contribute? I mean, we're under almost as much pressure now as they are at the higher levels, just on a smaller scale.
Yeah, I don't think there's any, JP, and your points are right on target, and thank you for the call. And Wayne, this is true. Look, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on college coaches, whether at the D3 or D2 or D1 level, to try and project kids and just how they're going to perform at that particular level in college. It's hard. It's very hard. First of all, kids obviously, even in their late teens, go through growth spurts. They change physically. Other kids just mature in terms of their attitude towards the game. It's very hard to predict or project these things, but that's what college coaches are basically forced to do.
Well, let's remember this. The difference between Division III and Division I are really rules. Your season length, your number of games, your practice hours, those are all less, thus making sports less of a focal point and having a full, more developmental experience at the school, and obviously not scholarship. That doesn't mean that coach is not going to run the program in a very tough way with workouts, with study hall, with practices, with intensity. I mean, what coach goes, you know what, I'm not a Division I coach, I'm a Division III, let's just not practice today. I mean, it's very, very intense. It's just that they are going to be limited in the number of games and practices, and that's what de-emphasizes the sport a little bit, but just as JP said, certainly not a lot.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's all part of the misconception that, well, if I go to a school which is D3, clearly they don't take the sport as seriously, or as they're not as competitive as a D1 program, and that's total nonsense. You talk to any of the top D3 programs, and they're just as competitive and as fiercely involved in wanting to win as any other college coach. The difference, of course, is, as you said, A, the D3 level, there are no scholarships, and B, they're mostly limited by how many games they can play, how long the season is, and so on and so forth. But the fact is, if you play sports in college, whether you go to a D3 or D2 or D1 program, you're not going to, like in high school, you might spend, 2 hours of practice 5 days a week. In college, you're going to spend a lot of hours practicing, traveling, working at your skill and your craft in the hope that you can perform and do well. At the D1 level, of course, it's all year round. It's as simple as that. I remember when my son was playing baseball in college. He started around in Labor Day at the school, and they practiced and weight training from Labor Day right into May every day.
Absolutely, and then what you don't factor in that is that you have your hours you're allowed to practice by the NCAA with the coaches, organized practice, and then you have what the kids do to go above and beyond because they're competing or they want to be as good as they can. So add in extra hours on your own or captain's practices, and it's pretty darn intense.
Wayne, I got to jump. Obviously, it's a great conversation, as always. Folks, go to WayneMazzoni.com. Wayne, my thanks, as always. Great stuff. Good talking with you.
Rick. Great to talk to you.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Sports